Okay, we got inside out strings. Here is the problem description. You're given a string of words called X. For each word within the string, you need to turn the word inside out. By this mean the internal letters will move out and the external letters move toward the center. If the word is even length, all letters will move. If the length is odd, you are expected to leave the middle letter of the word where it is. An example should clarify. Taxi would become attics, and taxis would become attixi with the X staying in the middle. And that's the only example they give here. So I'm going to try and put this in my own words. We always talk about these steps. See if we can read aloud, summarize the problem in your own words. And these are good practices for anything, whether you're working with a colleague, but they're especially good practices for interviewing. So if the interviewer gives you a problem or you're working through a technical challenge in an interview, this is how I would approach it. I would first read aloud, then I would do my best to concisely summarize in my own words. And I would say something like this. All right, so we're going to be given a string of words. And what we need to do is turn each word what they call inside out, which means take the innermost characters and put them on the outside and put the outermost characters on the inside. That's how I would summarize that problem. Then I would start to ask clarifying questions, which would be like this. I might say, it's not totally clear to me if we're rotating characters or we're just sort of flipping them, which I'm not positive, but I think would have a slightly different result. So I'll have to look at that in a second. In case, of course, if you could ask the interviewer, if you want to clarify that for me, I'm happy to hear anything more about that. The other thing that is not clear to me in the definition of the problem is I'm imagining these words are separated by spaces. Do you know if we'll have any punctuation in the sentence, and how should we treat that? Will there be commas or periods or exclamation marks? And in this case, I believe the answer is no. So we'll assume that the interviewer would say no, but you won't know when you're with an interviewer, right? And you need to work on asking these kind of clarifying questions to the interviewer. Great. With that, whatever the clarifying questions are, we'll move on. Now, when you're on Code Wars, you go ahead and open the tests. And we want to look here and see what any information we can pull out of here. So in the problem, they only have one very small example, but we can actually look at these as 3 more examples. Let's take a look here. So here is man. Man, oh, you know what? Could I miss further down? No. Nope, I didn't. I thought there was a little more description. Okay, so man, we know that the middle character, first of all, it's odd. It's an odd number of characters, right? 3. So the middle character should stay in the same place. And I look over here and I see indeed the middle character is still in the same place. Then I take the 2 halves, M on this side and N on this side, and I flip them. But when we flip one character, nothing changes. So as far as that goes, we can say, okay, nothing actually changes with man. With I, again, it's an odd numbered word or an odd number of characters with just 1, and it happens to be a middle character, so nothing will happen. Here we have need with 4 letters, so it's even numbered, and we expect then for E to go to the front and N to go to the middle, and E to go to the end and D to go to the middle. And here we see that indeed, E, N, D, E. Then we've got another 1-letter word, and then taxi, we already saw that one here. Up and 2 don't change at all. And then ubud is the same thing. U and B switch places, and U and D switch places. Whoops, I messed that one up. All right, with that, I feel pretty confident that 1, 2, and 3-letter words will not change. 1-letter words only has a middle character. It will stay the same. 2-letter words, theoretically, they flop, but they reverse, but there's only 1 character on each half, so it's not going to change. And 3, again, the middle character stays in the same place, and the characters on either side, while they theoretically would be reversed, there's nothing to reverse. So those are fine. When we get to 4, we split the word in half and we reverse each half of the word. So UB becomes BU, and UD becomes DU. Now let's look at one of the longer words, since that is my next question here. Here I have an 8-letter word, so we don't need to worry about the middle character. And we look here, we see MILC, MILC. So it's the first half of the word reversed, and then we would expect the other side to be GNIB. And here I see GNIB. So we're simply reversing the first half and the second half. Finally, let's look at a longer odd lettered word like volcano. C would stay in the middle, and here is that C. And VOL would be reversed into LOV, and A and O would be reversed to ONA. And that's that here. Great. So I'm just seeking to understand the problem. I'm going to work on speaking out loud as much as I can with the interviewer, as like just keep your mouth moving. Keep your mouth moving as much as you possibly can. The best thing to do is practice with a friend and just tell them, like, I got to stay talking. So if I stop talking, let me know, because I got to stay talking. It's very, it's not even like it's tempting. It's like a subconscious thing. Your mind gets engaged and you want to understand the problem, and your mouth gets quiet. And while I think interviewers have some tolerance for that, pretty quickly they're going to be, oh, what are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking. Or they're going to be thinking to themselves like, oh, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not going to, I'm not going to score them very highly. Got to stay talking all the time. If that doesn't come naturally to you, and actually for many people who are actually gifted with engineering, it doesn't come that naturally, then you got to practice it. If it does come naturally to you and you're just not that good at engineering, then great. You just got to practice more engineering. Very few people are good at both things. So if you're kind of a good talker and not the best problem solver, then you got to work on it. And if you're a great problem solver, but not the best talker, then you got to work on that too. Again, few people have both those things pretty naturally. Another thing I want to draw out of this problem, this is not so much part of the steps, but something we should pick up on, is anytime we have this kind of problem that says, for everything in a list, whether that's, every word in a sentence, every number in an array, every object in an array, something like that, every, entry in an array, every key value pair in an array. Oftentimes we want to take whatever we're doing to every element and delegate it to a helper function. And we're going to do that here. So we're going to start out with after our clarifying questions, we will give some examples. We just kind of use the examples here, but let's write out a few of them. We'd say, okay, what I'm seeing here is we could have a 1-letter word. And if we had a 1-letter word, then it stays the same. We could have a 2-letter word, and 2-letter words also stay the same. We could have a 3-letter word, and 3-letter words also stay the same. Now at 4 letters, we start to see a difference. And 4 letters, we take the first half and we reverse it. So here I have BA, and we take the second half and reverse it. So I have DC. At 5 letters, we have an odd number of characters, A, B, C, D, E. So I know the middle character stays in the same place. In that case, that's C. And the first 2 characters are reversed. So that's B and A. And the last 2 characters are reversed, and that's E and D. Okay, after that, we're just going to have ever larger even and odd numbered words. So the example given for an 8-letter word in the test was climbing. I'm going to use that same example. And with climbing, there's no letter in the middle. So we don't need to worry about that. We just need to reverse the first half, which is MILC, and the second half, which is GNIB. And that's what that is. And now I want to look at one longer odd numbered word, odd word with an odd number of characters. And we'll call that, how about climbings? And climbings, not sure that's a word, but it works for our purposes. We say B is in the middle. On the other side of B is MILC. And on the back side of B is SGNI. And then around there, I check in with the interviewer. That looks to me how we would reverse words that are even and odd at basically every point along every type of case we could handle, starting at a very simple case with the simplest word of 1 letter and working up to a more complex case with 9 letters in this case. Do you see any cases that I'm missing? Is there anything here I should think about in terms of other words? I mentioned earlier about punctuation. Could it be that I would have a comma here? Excuse me, a comma here. And in this case, we're going to assume that the interviewer says, no, don't worry about it. You won't have any punctuation. Okay. Could I have, like, could it be possible that I would have an email address, email@gmail.com? I'm not even sure that would change it, but is that possible we could have non-alpha characters here? Nope, that's also not going to happen. Oh, okay, great. Well, then I won't worry about that. These are the kind of little edge cases we want to pull out and say, maybe it's could there be a hyphenated word? Should I be aware of that? Like full dash stack. And again, all good questions that would be good to ask an interviewer in this problem. And our theoretical interviewer will just guess that they say, no, you don't need to worry about that. Great. But that's what we draw out when we're making examples. And if you've ever been to class with me before, you know that I say that this will probably look like a pyramid, where you start with a very, or at least it should look like a pyramid, where you start with a very simple example and you build up to a more complicated example. Now, why do we stop here? Because once we get to 8, 9 letters, the rules aren't going to change for 13 or 15 or 18 letters. It's just going to be the same rules all the way out. If there was some part of the problem that did make it change once we got 15 or 18 or 45 letters, then we would have to look at that. But in here, it doesn't really matter if we have 10 letters or 1,000 letters, the rules are going to be the same. Okay, with our examples done, let's write out. Now I tell the interviewer, all right, given that I'm going to handle each word one by one, I'm going to write a helper function, and I'm going to call it turn word inside out. Now, I have things that I think you must do here, and otherwise it's optional. The first thing is you should start with a verb. Every function should start with a verb. You will often see on CodeWars and sometimes LeetCode, sometimes other platforms, that they don't follow that convention. Just don't do it. It's a bad habit. We can't change what's here, but we can definitely control the functions that we write. So we want to start with a verb like turn. And then we want to use a variable name that's long enough, or a function name that's long enough to describe what we're going to do. I try and keep that so like a 5-year-old could understand. It doesn't say everything about how we're going to do it, but it says, what are we going to do? We're going to turn a single word inside out. And then here we match this word to word. What I would not do here is say string. I get that it's a string, right? It's not wrong or something like that to say string. In JavaScript, this will work just fine. But tell a story with your code. Make your function cohesive all the way through. So we'll call this word. Great. I can't change this, right? This, I can kind of change this. I can say, I don't want to call this X. I want to call this words, which is better. I can't change this or the test won't pass. We won't be able to submit our code. If you are in an interview, you oftentimes will be writing everything from scratch. So you can choose proper functions, function names and variable names throughout. All right, with this then, we're going to go ahead and delete the tests that are here, or at least comment them out. And we're going to start writing our own tests for our helper function. We're going to build up from our helper function into our primary function. And we're going to use our examples. So here I'm going to say, what do I want to do? I want to turn one word inside out. And I'm using quotes there to show that, inside out is kind of just a term that this problem is using. And now here I want to say it handles words of less than 3 characters. Now, I think this makes sense to handle all words of less than 3 characters together, since all of them don't change. You could quibble with that. I don't think it would be wrong to say, no, I want to handle words of 1 character and then 2 characters and then 3 characters in their own it blocks. If you're relatively new to testing, then your own opinion will form over time. But I'm going to group those 3 together. And the reason I'm doing that again is because all words of 1, 2, or 3 characters are not going to change at all. With that, I'm going to start with a word of 1 character, and I'm going to stick with what I chose as my example. So in my example, I chose A. And then the answer we expect is A. I'm not going to get too much into how all this testing syntax is working, but if you want to learn more, I have several videos on CodeTrack alongside different problems where I solve problems just like this. Or you can watch on the videos tab in the menu, you can watch videos from past weeks of this class, and we spend a little more time on it. But essentially all we're doing here is we're saying, I want to run this function, passing in a single A, and I expect to get back this same single A. This is all commented out. This is just some, some required statements to get our test to work here. Once we have that, we can go ahead and run our test for the first time. And we fail. And here we see expected undefined, which is what our function returned. Oh, I made a mistake, didn't I? In the test, we don't want to run it inside out. We want to run this helper function that we're working on, turn word inside out. The result is going to be the same. This is currently not returning anything, so it comes up as undefined. And it says that should be equal to A, in other words, the word here. Let's just go ahead and do return word. And we will run that test. And now we see, yep, that one little test is passing. With that, we'll copy this line and we will do our next one. Now remember, our next example is 2 letters, A and B. And I look at my it statement and I said, is that a word of less than 3 characters? Yes. Okay, then it's going to live in this little family of tests here. And what do we expect? We expect A, B. And again, I'll run that test and I see that it works just fine. Okay, we'll go on to 3 characters. And here we'll say A, B, C should be A, B, C. And we'll run that test. And boom, we've handled words of less than 3 characters. We could, we could do more and we could say, okay, well, what about something like A, and that should be A, which of course it will be. It's not a bad thing. You have to, with practicing testing, you start to see like, oh, there's diminishing returns as I test more and more similar things. So especially for an interview, we need to be quick. We need to get in and get out. I'm going to leave that test there, but these 3 are plenty to cover all of the cases of words less than 3 characters. With that, we'll go ahead and copy our it block. It stays inside of our describe block. Here, we're still turning one word inside out. And now here we'll say handles words with an even number of characters. Of less than, yes, less than, thank you, or equal to, thank you, Jenny. My bad there. Yes, less than or equal to 3 characters or less than 4 characters, but I actually prefer this, less than or equal to 3 characters. Okay, here we have handles words with an even number of characters. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these. Clean up here just a little bit. What am I? Oh, I'm missing my double quotes there. Great. And we'll go to our example. Our example is A, B, C, D. And our expected output here is B, A, D, C. And with that, we'll run our test again. When we're doing test-driven development, we run our test first. We expect it to fail. It won't always fail. Sometimes we happen to have code that makes it pass, but the most normal thing is for it to fail. Now I look here and I say, yeah, it's not going to work to not change the word in this case. I need to actually turn this word inside out and then return word. Here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to worry about having a middle character for a word of odd length. We'll get there once our tests tell us to handle that. For now, we're just going to go ahead and write our pseudocode for how we're going to handle this. So I'm going to say split the word into 2 equal halves. Then with, let's see, take first half, even that we don't need this word take. Let's just say what we actually want to do with it. We want to split first half on each character, reverse the characters, join each character. So if I take the first half of this word, which is A and B, and then I split them so that I have an array that's like A and B, and then I reverse them. So now I have B and A, and then I join them. That will give me B and A. And I might do something just like that in an interview. I would write out my pseudocode. And if I feel the need to, whether I think it's not clear to the interviewer or if it's not totally clear to me, I would just write out steps like this. I'm looking at my test and I'm writing exactly what I expect to happen in each part here. Eventually, I'll go delete this last part, but for right now, I think it's fine to leave it there. Let me pause for questions. Anybody have questions until now? Okay. Let's keep going. Great. Now, where are we going to put this? Let's go back a step and say create variable. Call it a string variable for inside out word. Okay. And then at this point, we say add joined characters to inside out word variable. Jalaman, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'm looking at your line 10 that says split the word. That word, is it the parameter there?
Yes.
So is that not an entire string, or you're looking at a word in an entire string?
Yeah, so I don't know if you joined a little bit late. What I said is when we have a problem where it says, go over a bunch of words and do something to each word, or go over an array and do something to every element in that array. Oftentimes that should be like a blinking red light for blinking green light, I guess, for create a helper function. If we're going to do the same thing with every word, let's do it in its own function. And then this function will just serve to delegate each word to this function here.
Thank you. I've seen
You're
it. Thank you.
very welcome.
Yes.
Very welcome. Okay, on we go. So now we just need to do something similar to the other side. So we say, let's drop down, we'll say split second half. Think about CD, DC, yep. Split second half into two equal halves. Sorry, split second half on each character. Character, yep. Reverse the characters, join each character. Look, I can almost just copy this. If I have to copy that, it's a good chance we need to make, or at least we can make probably another function. So let's go through this one. So here we say, okay, this started out as C. Start here. This starts out as C and D when we split it. Then here we reverse it. So D comes to the front and C goes to the back. Then we join this and we have D and C. And then we add joined characters to inside out word variable. And so here we should have said this is now B and A. And here by the time we add them, we have B, A, B, C. Now I checked my test to make sure that's right. B, A, D, C. Yep, it looks correct. Given that these things are repeating themselves almost exactly, we can either condense them into one line, or we could just write another function. Let's write another function real quick. Let's do function reverse string. Let's put in our string. Now here, I call it a string because it's not really, at least in the context of our story, it's not a whole word. It's going to be half of the word. And let's do return string dot split on every character dot reverse dot join. Okay, we've got a little helper function here. And now I can go back and I'm going to actually rework this and just say, invoke reverse string on second half. And we'll do the same thing up here on first half. Add reversed string to inside out, and here we'll do the same thing. Add reverse string. And now I feel like I can drop these. And that will be our pseudocode. Now here we don't want to return word anymore. We want to return inside out word. So I don't know, let's make a comment right now. Let's say return inside out word, something like that. Okay. Every interviewer will be different. Some interviewers are just going to be so excited to see you working through a process like this and writing up your code, not code, writing up your pseudocode, and they're going to be with you all the way. Others might say something like, it's cool, I see what you're doing, but like, let's just write the code. Great. You got to be ready for either one. But what I see most often is people are always ready to jump in and write their code. They don't have as much practice writing pseudocode like this. So I would, and I see over and over in feedback from interviewers that they want to see more of the applicant writing pseudocode. So I would look at some of the videos we've done in past weeks, if you're still, not so strong with this, and work to get stronger with it. Especially like I write something out, I write out more, oh, they're kind of the same, no problem. I then divert a bunch of that logic into here, and then I can condense it. And I try and keep every line something I can turn into one line of code. This one right here is a good candidate for something that is not that good, not that easily turned into 2 lines of code. So we'll have to think about this line a little bit. Lenny asked a good question. How do you get better at pseudocode? So I'll tell you one of my favorite exercises. Take a problem like this. Doesn't matter. It can be leak code, it can be code wars, it can be a problem really from anywhere. If you're in a boot camp and they give you problems, it doesn't really matter. Work on writing the pseudocode and then give that pseudocode without talking to them any further. Give the pseudocode to a friend who's also learning to code and ask them to write the code. And then take their code and see if it passes the problem. That's how you get better at pseudocode. And all of that without showing them the problem. So you know the problem and you write the pseudocode, give the pseudocode to a friend, they write the code, they give the code back to you, you run it against the platform that you're using and see if it passes. If it doesn't, you look at your pseudocode and you look at their code, and then you ask yourself, is my pseudocode sufficiently clear that they should have known exactly what to do? And if you want to further test yourself, give that same pseudocode to 3 people. And if one of them messes it up, maybe that's on them. But if all 3 of it mess it up, that's on you. It means your pseudocode is not clear enough, not good enough. Does that answer your question, Lenny? Good. That's one of my favorite exercises for teaching how to write better pseudocode. Lena, yes, the platform is free. You're free to invite friends and they're free to come to this weekly class. It's not always at this exact same time, but for the foreseeable future, I'll be doing a class on the weekend and they can watch all the recordings of the older classes as well. Okay, so that's the best way, I think, to really discipline yourself. Of course, just trying to write pseudocode before you write your code is also a perfectly good exercise, but that's what I do a lot with my students is I either I have them write the pseudocode and pass it off, or I have them read I have 2 students sit across the table from each other, and I have one read the problem silently to themselves and then tell the other how to write the code. So something like create a function. The function name is whatever it is. The function has 3 parameters. The parameters are this, this, and this. And if you're not in JavaScript, then you need to say the data types as well, right? If you're in a language where you have to actually say the data types of the parameters, or if you're using TypeScript. Okay, first thing, go ahead and create a variable called this and set it equal to this. And then you go through that exercise, and then again, you take their code and you run it against the tests of the problem, and you see if you were able to tell them clearly how to write the code. Okay, both of those are good. Writing down the pseudocode though and giving it to someone else, you can just challenge each other. Each person takes a different problem, and you don't know what problem they have, they don't know what problem you have. You both write the pseudocode to that problem, and then you trade. You give them your pseudocode, they give you theirs. Then you write the code from their pseudocode, and then you go trade back the code or whatever. Then you just copy and paste the code into Code Wars or like LeetCode, whatever, it doesn't really matter. One of these platforms, and you see if it's passing. And then you look and say, was the pseudocode at fault or was my code at fault, or vice versa? Was my pseudocode at fault or was their code at fault? If their code was at fault, was my pseudocode clear enough, or could it be even more clear? Great. Okay. We are going to keep going. Yeah, I think we're pretty much ready here. Let's go ahead and do it. All right. If I'm with an interviewer, let me just expand this real quick. I'm saying to the interviewer, okay, this looks good to me. I think this is going to solve the problem. Mind you, we're only solving the problem of a single word right now. Once we're done with this, we're going to handle each word in turn. Do you see any issues with my pseudocode or anything you'd like me to clarify? And hopefully the interviewer says, oh yeah, it looks good to me. Or what do you mean by split the word into 2 equal halves? How are you going to do that? That's a good question. Well, actually what I'm going to do now that you mention it, I'm going to create a first half variable, or a variable called first half. Create a variable called first half with first half of chars. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the second half. Create a variable called second half with second half of chars. Cool. Oh yeah, okay, that seems more clear to me. I can see how we're going to do that. I'm just kind of making it up. They might call out any given thing in your pseudocode. Now, we have not done anything, right, since we wrote this last test. Even if we run these tests again, nothing has changed. So now we got to write our actual code here. See if we can get this test to pass. So let's go ahead and do it. We'll say let inside out word equals empty string. Here's what I don't do. Let solution, let string, let word, let inside out. Bad, and bad. Don't do it. Just give me a nice long variable name that says exactly what we're going to do. Your interviewers will not penalize you unless you have some insanely long variable name. But these, I always get great feedback from my interviewers when I'm writing very expressive variable names. I'm not trying to truncate it. Even worse, if you're doing like let s, please don't do this. Don't do it. Or IO for like inside out, anything like that. IOS for inside out string. Like you can just see already how that would be so confusing. You don't want that. Stick with something, goes with the word, goes with this, it all matches. Great. On we go. Create a variable. My pseudocode is my boss now, right? If I've done my job with my pseudocode, writing the code should be so easy. Create a variable called first half and set it equal to the first half of the characters. Good. It's my job to know how to get the first half of the characters. Something like word dot slice 0 word dot length divided by 2. Now, again, I'm not getting caught up on odd numbered words here, words with an odd number of characters. So if I want to check this real quick, I say, okay, if I have A, B, C, and D, if I slice it from the 0th index, that's here. The length is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. The second index is here. I know that slice in JavaScript stops before the index that's here. So it's going to give me A and B. So I'm fine there. Great. Okay, next one. That is the kind of thing you should just know. You should know that going into an interview. If you don't know that, you need to practice your methods. I said I'd get that cheat sheet out. I'm still working on it. It didn't make it to the top of my priority list this week, but it will come. So, but in JavaScript, methods like slice are things you should absolutely know. Okay, second half equals word dot slice. Now here I want to start at word dot length divided by 2 and go to the end. If I don't provide a second argument, then it by default will go to the end. Again, that's just something I know because I'm fluent in JavaScript and you should be too. If indeed you work with JavaScript and you want a job. All right. Invoke reverse string on the first half. This wasn't the most clear thing, but I think it's clear enough. We want to do first half equals reverse string on first half. And then I'm just going to copy this line. I'm sorry, to go here, and we're going to do this with second half and second half. I don't always do it, but I should be copying and pasting even more than I am. Okay, here we say add reverse string to the inside out word variable. All right, so inside out word plus equals, again, I'm going to copy, should have copied the first one too, first half. And here we'll copy this and we're going to put it right here. And now we'll copy second half. And there we go. And finally, we're going to return inside out word. If you don't see what is odd length, it's because we're following test-driven development and we're doing one thing at a time. Right now, we're just handling even length words. And once we're done with that, then we'll handle odd length words. Again, something I just see over and over with so many people that I work with is they get in a ball of yarn of all the things they think they need to solve at once instead of just focusing on one problem at a time. You can of course go ask if you have some mentors or you have someone you respect or admire that's a software engineer, or that you don't respect and admire that's a software engineer, and you can kind of ask them, and I don't know that you'll find complete agreement. Would you rather somebody solve a problem very methodically and not finish, or kind of plow through it and assemble things together? And I think you all know what I'm talking about, because that's the natural way that most people tackle a problem, especially when you're new as a developer. You just kind of jump in and I got to do this. Oh, what about odd? What about this? Like one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. I would much rather a one thing at a time person than that makes sense and follows through methodically than somebody who, even if they have a bit more intuition, can just throw it together. I know, because I've worked long enough, that nobody's intuition is big enough for the kind of problems you're going to get when you're working. And you need that methodical, one step at a time. I worked with a guy, I just had dinner with him last night, actually. We worked together a bunch of years ago. And I just always called him the bulldog. I think bulldogs are like that. Anyways, he wasn't the fastest, but he never gave up on a problem. And he was very methodical on how he tackled it. And I would look and be like, man, he's kind of going slow. But 3 days later, he had the problem solved, or whatever it was. 5 days later, he had the problem solved, and it was good and it was thorough, and his stuff didn't get bounced back a lot because he had been so thorough. I, on the other hand, tried to tackle things fast, and I told my boss, I'm going to be the fastest guy on your team. You're going to see I'm fast and I'm smart. And I don't know if I told him I'm smart, but I basically implied it. And man, I got my ass handed to me, as it were, as I realized, like, yeah, I am smart, but nobody is smart enough to not work methodically when you get onto a big system, a big website, or any kind of big software project. Okay. That's why that all goes to the point of why I tackle one thing at a time, and then I train people that I work with to tackle one thing at a time. All right. With that, let's go ahead and see if our test is passing. See if I've done my job. So I run that. Oh, it's failed. A, C, comma B to equal A, B, C. What did I do there that I messed that up so bad? A, C. Oh, I see. One thing is I've did a couple things wrong here. First of all, this is broken here with join. Needs to be joined on that. Let's run that. We're still gonna have some breaking here. A, C, and B, right? Should be A, B, C. So I've regressed. I've gone back and broken tests that I already have. That's okay that we got tests. So now we just know, hey, stop. And if you need to, you can say, oh, hey, I'm not going to pass this until I fix whatever I've broken here. And say, okay, how many of these do I have to delete before I see green? Not delete, comment out. Okay, well, I see green here. Cool, I see green. Now I know what I'm breaking. This is breaking. Run that. All right, it's not that hard to fix, right? I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna just add a guard clause. I'm gonna say if word length less than 3, and now I indent to show that I'm here, return word. That's like pseudocode, but it's so simple, hardly matters. We'll just say if word dot length is less than 3, return word. With that, run that test again. Sorry, less than or equal to word. Thank you, Lena. And great, my bad there. Okay, with that, I come back here and I say, all right, am I still passing this test? Yes, and how about this one now? Yes, great. Okay, we're looking good. Now, in our examples, we have more even letter words, right? Climbing, for example, is 8 letters. So we want to put that inside this group as well. So I come down here, we'll put this in. I'll say climbing should be MILC and GNIB. And we'll run that. And we're looking good. Most of the time, 2 tests in a sort of it block is enough. Here we needed 3, we put 4. We could always put more, right? Of course, I can find more even letter words if I want to, but this is enough. We can move on with this. Okay, with that, we can move on to odd lettered words. Come down here, it handles words with an odd number of characters. And here we have A, B, C, D, E. Oh, my mouse slowed down. There we go. I'm going to delete this one. And here we say we have B, A, C, E, D. If you're not quick to figure something like that out, it's not a big deal. Just go up to your examples and copy and paste it. We've already figured it out right here. Okay, let's go ahead and run that. Oof, we got a problem. No big deal. That's what we expected, right? Now we know that we're handling odd number of characters. You can see how these tests even they just build very methodically into a nice story, clearly showing what we're trying to do here. So less than 3 characters, even number of characters, now odd number of characters. Okay. Why A, B, C, D is B, A, D, C, not the other word? We reverse the whole word. So what word? This one here? Yes. So CLIM is the first half here. CLIM. And BING is the second half here. BING. So we're reversing the first half alone and the second half alone. And if you want to check that, we have here climbing, and we can see that it's MILC here and then GNIB here. So I'm taking clues from their here's. We always divide by 2, yes, although when we get to odd numbered words, we think to ourselves, so what about, let me just go to my one test that I'm failing, right? A, B, C, D, E. What is happening in my code when I run A, B, C, D, E? And let's open this up and let's say, okay, is it less than or equal to 3? No, it's 5. Okay, does this change? No, it doesn't change. All right, first half. So here is A, B, C, D, E. What's happening here? Well, the first thing is 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So 0 to 2.5 is going to be A, B, and C. So it looks to me like what we need here is math.floor. How do I know math.floor? Because I know JavaScript. Really, how you solve the problems, your approach, you're going to get new problems, right? You can't know the problem, but you can know JavaScript, and you can know things like math.floor and math.ceiling and math.round and slicing words and joining and splitting and reversing, all of these fairly common methods. So make sure you get comfortable with those. I have a a game that's coming next week. It helps with that a lot as far as knowing methods. It's another thing I see very commonly with people I work with is they don't know their methods well. And it's important. So, all right, if I do this, I say, okay, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. The floor of that is 2. And so now I'm getting A and B again. So that seems good. Now here, what about this? 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. I want to start at 0, 1, 2, 3. So here I actually want the ceiling, math dot ceiling of this here. And with that, let's run it and see what we get. Okay, now I see BA nothing, ED, and here I have BACED. So I'm missing the middle letter here. Let's fix that, and then we'll probably have a solution to this. So somewhere down here, between where I add the first half and I add the second half, I say, oh, you know what? I missed something. I need to do in here something like if word length is odd, add middle character to inside out word. Something like that. So whether we follow test-driven development or we miss it, or you knew it from the beginning, great. Just again, handle it one thing at a time. And now let's say, okay, we need to write this code. So if word.length the modulo 2 equals 1, meaning it's odd, and I'll open up my brackets. First thing I do when I have pseudocode that goes inside of a block, inside of an if block or a loop or anything else, I indent, and then as soon as I open my block, I encapsulate that in the block so I don't lose my way. Now I say, okay, take inside out word. Sorry. Oh, it's getting kind of slow. And I say plus equal the middle character. How do I find the middle character? Well, I could do word at word dot length divided by 2. Again, we'll think about this. We'll say, okay, word dot length here is 5. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. But I actually want the floor of that. I want the second index is the middle of a 5-letter word. This, I think, again, is where it's really helpful to have very specific examples, because then I'm not saying, well, what's word dot length? I know what word dot length is. It's 5. 5 divided by 2, I know what that is. It's 2.5. Why do I choose a 5-letter word? Because it's easier to do 5 divided by 2 rather than 17 divided by 2 or something like that. And of course, easier than doing 33 divided by 2. Just pick the simplest cases that you can work with. How come not 3 divided by 2? Because we already determined that 3 is not a case where the word will be reversed anyways. 5 is the first odd numbered word where we have to think about this. That's why I'm using 5. That's why we follow test-driven development. Cool. Math dot floor here. Okay. What if it's an even numbered word? Well, no problem. It's just going to skip this block here. So I don't think we need to worry about it. And we'll go ahead and test that. And now, boom, I'm passing it. Beautiful. We're not done with our examples, right? I have at least one more. Here is climbings. So let's bring that down. So down here, just paste that for a second. I'm going to copy this line. I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to put my values that I want to assert. Climbings should be this, and we'll go ahead and delete that. And let's run it. And look, it's passing. Wonderful. So I've at least put all these examples in, right? Again, this would be a good time to check in with the interviewer and say, I think I'm handling all the different cases of words. Do you see anything I'm missing? And they could say, oh, what about capital letters? What about this? What about that? Great. Whatever they say, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not sure I need to handle that. I think it would be the same. Or, you know what? That's great. And let me slot that example in wherever it belongs here. Or they say, you know what? I know I said there wouldn't be hyphens, but actually there could be hyphens. And if they were, you would want to reverse the first part of the word and the second part of it, whatever they're going to say. Great. I have a great framework to go ahead and make changes. Or they might just do a total change up on you and say, you know what? I like so much what you're doing here. Let's ignore the whole parsing a sentence of words. Let's get this function to do whatever. Great. Well, I have all of my tests built up. So as I make changes, I will see if I break any of them. However, we're just going to finish out this problem. So we say here, okay, let's write some pseudocode. We're given us, we have a string of words, right? So I'll say, okay, I'm going to have to split words into individual words. Okay, then I'm going to say, I'm going to iterate through each word. And now, whenever I say iterate, notice this could be a for loop, can be a while loop, can be a lot of different ways to get through it. I don't care, and I don't say what kind of loop I'm going to use. I just need to tell you to iterate through each word. Going back to that example of writing code and giving it to a friend, you don't need to tell them, hey, write a for loop here, or write a for of loop, or write a for in loop, or write a while loop. Doesn't matter. As long as they iterate through each word, however they want to do it, it's totally fine. Or they want to use map, they want to use some kind of built-in function, it's okay. Iterate through each word. We say invoke turn words inside out on word. And then we say, we could put it back to the same array. Let's do that. Replace word with inside out word. And then finally, we'll bring this one home by return inside out words joined on space. Okay. Now, with that, let's open up our tests. Let's bring back this block of tests. It's coming, it's coming. It's really lagging. There we go. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and comment that out. And let's put this here. We'll say it handles strings with one word. That's just about the simplest example we can get. So we can go ahead and delete these. Now, if I'm giving good examples like this, I'm not going to totally delete them, especially if you're in an interview. It's good to keep them. But I'm just going to comment them out. And here I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, we could have one word. Let's just to not spend too much more time here. Let's go with A, B, C, D. And we already know the answer to this, right? It's actually this same answer right here. So I will put that right here. And let's go ahead and run it. So we run our tests. Now, all of our tests are running on our turn word inside out. But now we see inside out strings is failing. It's undefined. So let's fix that. We'll just follow along here. So we're going to say words equals words dot split. Let's see if we can do better than this. Let's say inside out words equals words dot split on an empty space. Iterate through each word. I'm going to do for let, you know what, that won't work. I'll do it like this. Let I equals 0. I is less than inside out words. There we go. Dot length I plus plus. Again, whenever you see my pseudocode is indented here, I just go ahead and delete that, bring it down, and put it there. There's different ways you can do that, but don't wait. I see people forget it and then they don't realize their code is not scoped properly. It's not good. Stay organized. I'm not very good at staying organized myself, so I have to work really hard at that, but it's really easy to get lost. Okay, so here we'll say inside out words. I think we can actually do this in one line. At I equals turn word inside out, passing in inside out words at I. That does both of these things. Let's move this up for right now. It's too much up. And if I get out of whack, I don't hesitate to kind of stop and get myself back here. Replace word with, let's see if we get this all into one line. with invoking this. Call this invoking this. Now we'll get rid of that. Looks good. Okay, now we just say return inside out words dot join on space. Okay, let's give that a run. See if we're passing our test now. Okay, that looks good. We're ready to write the next test. Right here, I'm going to do one more example here with A, B, C, D, E. And again, I'll take from this solution here. I don't have to refigure it out. Great. We'll go ahead and test that. Cool. Only a couple more things we need to do here. I'm just going to bring this one back and I'm going to write a nicer message. We're going to say it handles strings with more than one word. And we'll do one at a time in case we find any errors. We want to be clear on where they're coming from. Okay, it looks like we're good there. And how about here? We're good. One more. Good. Okay. Look at our code one more time. Okay, now I tell the interviewer, I think I've solved this. I think I'm ready to be done with this problem. And do you see anything I'm missing? And the interviewer will say whatever they want to say. I think our code looks pretty darn good here. When you're practicing, I encourage you to always discipline yourself not to click on attempt until you're sure that you've solved it, or at least as sure as you can be. And with that, we'll go to attempt. And we expect to get green the very first time, pass all of the tests the first time. That represents, like we've talked about before in class, represents the kind of thoroughness that we need to have as engineers, where we can basically go to our boss or our team and say, okay, you gave me a problem. I thought through every possibility in this problem. I thoroughly tested it, and I'm confident that my code can go out into the world and reliably be used and not let anybody down. With that, we'll submit it. Okay, that took about an hour. Right, we probably started about 7:38. I think it would go a little bit faster if I'm in an interview because I'm not teaching. And you know, a lot of times in an interview, you're not going to be able to do that thorough of testing, and that's okay. It's the way the world works. It's all right. But to not do any testing, I don't think is a good alternative. It's like I'm gonna show that I can build my tests as I go, and then I'm going to, work with the interviewer based on what they say as far as how fast I should go. Someone asked for the solution again. Let me find it. You can see I've solved this problem a few times. Here it is. Oops. Let me see if I can just dump it in a replit so everybody can take a look at it. Nope, this isn't it, is it? No. Here it is. Yeah, I know. I like, I don't know, it takes time. Especially if you're trying to code along with everything. I think these are kind of things you want to grab onto and study on a bit. I know it's pretty tough to just keep up. And here is oh, you know what? Sorry, the tests go away. I should have copied them before. Code words will save your solution, but they don't save the test. So I guess it's up to you to write your tests out. And I guess I just said a variation of this, but here's the link to this. Sorry. Like the interviewer is the boss, right? I think this is a really beautiful process that I teach. Of course, I'm biased. I teach it. So you can take it around and see what other people think. However, like many things that are very, very good, it's not always practical to stick exactly to this. And I just look at the interviewer for cues, right? Sometimes you don't have to read the problem aloud. The interviewer is just going to tell you the problem, but you should always iterate the problem back to them. Sometimes you're going to start putting together examples and the interviewer is going to be like, okay, I see that, but like, let's like jump into the problem. Okay. Like, all right, great. I would probably note to the interviewer, I like to be really thorough with my examples. I see that, but I know we don't have time for all that. So let's move on. And like you said, let's move on, and I'm sure we'll come across them as we go. Sometimes the interviewer would literally have you just write pseudocode and see it and be like, yeah, it looks great. I can see you know how to think through this, and I'm be comfortable recommending you for a job. And they don't really care about how well you know JavaScript or Python or whatever else. It's especially true if they know they're going to train you in a new language. If you've told them, hey, I learned Ruby in the program I went through. I know you guys work with Python. I feel confident I could learn it. And they give you a challenge and they say like, yeah, okay, just write the pseudocode and we'll just expect that when you join the company, you're going to spend the first 4 to 6 weeks getting up to speed in a new language. And sometimes with testing, they're going to just love it. They're going to be like, oh, I just love this, how you're very thorough and methodical. And sometimes you're going to be like, look, I just need you to like get the solution and we need to move on here. Okay. But you'll never convince me that following this process won't make you a better developer. It will make you a better developer. It will make you think more methodically. It will slow you down. It will start to help you be less jumbled in your thinking when you're trying to tackle a lot of things at once.